Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, we're going to take a look at adding integers, and specifically we'll go over vocab and talk about adding integers that have the same sign. So the main goal today is how do we add integers? And like I said, this is going to be a video where we're going to add integers with the same sign, but we'll also take a look at a later video where we're going to add integers that have different signs, and then eventually how do we add 3 or more integers at one time. So to review some important vocab, we have integer, which is a number with no fraction part, which also means no decimals, that can be positive, negative, or 0. Another way to think about it is that it's any number from this set, a -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and so on, right? Where the ... means it continues without end. So integers, there's an infinite amount of them. Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. So as a reminder, we use these bars here to indicate absolute value. And so this question would ask, what is the absolute value of 2, which is 2, because this value of 2, again, it's 2 units away from 0 on the number line. And then same over here, right? Absolute value of -3, this would be +3 because -3 is just 3 units to the left of 0, but the distance is 3. Opposites have the same absolute value but different signs. So for example, 4 and -4 would be considered opposites. And then additive inverse, which we'll take a look at in a later video as well. This just is when we have 2 integers that are opposites. The additive inverse property states that the sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. All right, so let's jump into some examples here. So adding integers with the same sign is really quite simple. For this first one, we're taking a look at finding -7 plus -2. So notice again, we have a negative here as well as another negative, so -7 and a -2. And when we have the same sign, the trick is just to keep the sign and add like normal. So 7 plus 2 is going to be 9, but since they're both negatives, this would be a -9, and that would be my final answer. If I were to model this on a number line, we would have, starting at 0, we would move to -7 first. So there's my -7. And then we would add on 2 more negatives, which means I'm going to continue to move to the left 2 spots, and notice that we end up at -9. We can also, again, just not even have to use a number line. It's totally up to you. Another way that you can think about adding integers too is just even thinking of what are called like integer tiles. And so with integer tiles, this bottom example here, -9 plus -8, if we have 9 negatives and we have 8 more negatives, nothing is canceling out here, right? When we talk about different signs, we'll talk about how there's these 0 pairs that cancel out with one another. Here we don't have anything, and so you can literally just go through and count down how many negatives do we have here. And in this case, we have 9 negatives plus 8 more negatives, which gives us a grand total of 17 negatives. So that's another way that you can think of it. So you can use a number line to help visualize what's going on. You can use these integer tiles to help you visualize what's happening. Or eventually, the goal is that you won't even need those visuals and that you can just do them without. So for some extra examples, let's take a look at like -1 plus -5. So this is a nice one that we can just go ahead and model on this vertical number line. So a vertical number line is going to work the same way as a horizontal one. Just we're going to start at 0. I'm going to move to -1 first, and then I'm adding 5 more negatives, which means I'm moving further down the number line, and I end up at -6. So my answer for this example is going to be -6. Taking a look at another example, let's do -4 plus -13. Again, as a reminder, the pattern here is that if they are the same sign, you just add like normal. So 4 negatives plus 13 negatives is going to give me a total of 17 negatives. Now, just as a side note here, I know sometimes students are like, why are we putting parentheses around this? It's just a nice way of saying, hey, this is a negative value. It looks kind of weird if we just write it as a plus sign and then, again, what is also a minus sign, right next to each other. So those parentheses are just a way to help us keep organized and hopefully not lose track of our negative signs. So just a little side note there. All right, let's take a look at a couple more just so we can really get this pattern down. So -6 plus -4. So again, they are the same sign. So if I have 6 negatives and 4 negatives, this is going to be a total of 10 negatives. And let's say I have negative 15 plus negative 36, so getting a little bit bigger with numbers, but it's the same idea. So if I have 15 negatives and I'm adding on 36 more negatives, you're going to have a total, in this case, of 51 negatives. So my answer would be negative 51. And just as a reminder, you have actually been adding integers with the same sign all along, because a question like the following, 27 plus 43, this is a question you have done for many, many, many years, right? But these are considered integers, right? They're just positives. So don't forget, if you have two positives, it's going to be positive. So 27 plus 43 is going to be 70. So the last thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a look at some story problems. Integers, there's a lot of keywords that indicate whether it's positive or negative. So for this first one at the top here, it says Allie borrowed $139 from her parents to purchase an ebook reader. During the first month, she purchased $47 in apps, games, and movies, which was added to the amount she already owed her parents. So what integer represents the amount of money Allie had at the end of the first month? So I noticed that she's borrowing $139, and then she's purchased $47 worth of apps, games, and movies. So this is getting added to the amount that she already owed to her parents. So both of these here, she owes her money, $139 and $47. She owes that money to her parents, right? So she's in debt that amount. So both of these values would be considered a negative. So we're going to do negative 139, and then like they said, this is going to be added to this other amount that she's used up. And so all we have to do now is just figure out, well, what's 139 plus 47? So just going through and doing our normal addition here, right? Find out that that's $186, but she's in the hole that amount, right? She's in debt. So we would say it's negative 186. And then some students will add their dollar sign. It's totally up to you. Technically, when it says what integer represents that amount of money, you don't need the label, but I always like to encourage my students to include labels when, you know, a program allows you to type it in, or like even on our practice, I tell students to write their label, because it's a good habit to get into when you have these story problems, right? So I would just add the dollar sign to be safe. So negative $186. So the second problem is going to be very similar. So it says Sydney is shopping for a friend's birthday party. She withdraws $37 from her checking account to spend on food. She then withdraws another $18 to spend on party supplies. What integer represents the total change in her account balance? So going into some personal finance here, withdrawing money means you're taking it out of your account, right? So she's withdrawing $37. She's taking that out of her account. She's withdrawing another $18. Again, that money's coming out of her account. So both of those values are considered negatives. So we have negative 37, and again, you're adding on this other withdrawal, so negative 18. And so the total here, again, just like last time, we're going to do 37 plus 18. Again, if they're the same sign, you add like normal and keep the sign. And so we find out she is in the hole $55. So we're going to write negative, and again, $55. And then that's it. So again, if you want to see how adding integers works with different signs, I would highly recommend you take a look at the later videos that I have in this series, as well as a video about additive inverses. Thanks for watching.